The Awesome Adventures of Captain Spirit was both everything I wanted in a Don't Nod game and more than I expected from a one-episode prologue to Life is Strange Season 2. I was amazed at how believable its child protagonist was, how the game deals with the loss of a loved one, but most importantly, how it addresses alcoholism. We play as Chris Erickson, or the more aptly named Captain Spirit. After losing his mother in a car accident 2 years earlier, both he and his father are wrestling to find their place in a new one-parent home. However, they cope with their transition into this new world without a loved one very differently. Chris uses his adventures as an escape from the real world to somewhere fantastic and beautiful, and somewhere that needs him. His father, on the other hand, escapes inward, just like his son does, but instead through alcohol. Often we see alcoholism being used as almost a character trait, or the token drunk in the game, or the rare game that tackles alcohol through symbolism, which I'm not opposed to, but it never really felt like it attacks the issue head on. Rarely, if ever, is alcohol used as a profound plot point, conflict, or catalyst with any sense of purpose. That's where Captain Spirit hits its mark. Compared to film or literature, video games lag behind when it comes to talking about problems like alcoholism or drug use with much maturity. Not to say that it doesn't happen, but you can't tell me that a game like Max Payne shows a serious side to drugs or alcohol when it's basically used as a health pack or power-up and carries along with it little to no narrative consequences. Compare that to a film like Hacksaw Ridge, where Desmond Doss is shaped by his father's addiction to alcohol, or Flight, that places alcoholism as the front and center struggle that Whip Whitaker must wrestle with throughout the film. This is why I feel that Captain Spirit achieved something special. They included alcohol into their narrative like I've not seen in a video game before. It not only shapes Charles, the dad, but the environment, history, conflicts, goals, and of course, it shapes our protagonist, Chris. There are many defining moments in Captain Spirit that provide an insight into how alcohol has impacted the lives of our characters, but I'd like to point out 3 specific ways that alcohol shapes the story: how our characters act and react, their environment, and differing perspectives. Based on how our characters act and react, we can tell from the first scene of the game in the kitchen the role alcohol plays in their relationship. From Chris's perspective, we see him act and react in a few ways that show us early on how he feels about drinking, especially in the morning while making breakfast. We have an option to react to Charles's drinking habits, but it unfortunately makes no change to how he conducts his basketball, liquor, and sleeping schedule. If we do take the chance to mention our father's drinking, he'll go on the defensive and justify it under the guise of game day drinking, only to reach for the harder stuff as soon as he gets a chance. Charles then makes a transition to bringing up the new and touchy topic of an injury that he gave Chris. Looking at his bruised arm, he's searching for a response that tells him things are okay, and we have the option to give him that satisfaction or not. After that, we're introduced to the end goal of the day, the thing Chris looks forward to the most, getting a Christmas tree. However, it will prove to be the turning point in the narrative later on, but we'll get to that soon enough. This dialogue shows the player how familiar Chris has become with his father's drinking, both in knowing and fearing the inevitable sleep that follows Charles's morning drinking. Based on the actions and reactions in this first scene, we're able to learn the role alcohol plays in their relationship. For Chris, we understand that it's something that he's aware of and doesn't like. We can assume that he's been injured by his father while drunk, and his father has been drinking for some time. We can also learn that Charles justifies his drinking. He believes that he has it under control, acknowledges and almost apologizes for the injuries he's caused Chris, and values drinking over promises kept. Not until my second playthrough did I get a feel for the amount of storytelling the game does through the environment. With regards to drinking in particular, we learn more about Charles through the environment than we do Chris. However, subtle nods to Chris's distaste for alcohol really stood out. In more than one of his adventures, beer is in some way associated with the enemy. He even makes a point to destroy the beer before throwing it away. In simple terms, to Chris, alcohol is evil. I would assume that it's not naturally evil to him, but has grown to become the enemy from seeing its effect on his father. On the other hand, it takes nearly no searching to understand why his dad drinks. He lost the love of his life and is facing a new world without her. He stumbles in the pursuit to be both parents, but finds himself falling short more and more. Whether it is financially, mentally, emotionally, or even in simple situations as cooking, he feels he's losing. And I'm not saying that it's agreeable to depend on alcohol in difficult situations like this, but it is understandable how some people can find comfort in an escape or numbing of those points of stress or fear. His wife and her absence is at the heart of all of his struggles. Charles's pain is clear from the documents, pictures, and mementos that he holds on to years after her passing in the hopes of keeping her in his life. Even holding her perfume close just to remember her scent. Losing her has become his burden and has led him to turning out the world and his son to find his own peace inside. Near the end of the story, the differing perspectives of father and son on a world after a wife and mother has passed come to the open as we see how their perspectives clash. While playing as Chris, we have the opportunity to learn about the struggles his dad's going through, the loss of his job, finding companionship with someone new, the struggles of being a single parent, social services notices, and of course the trouble the loss of his wife has caused him. We learn his perspective, at least as much as we can from the world around us. It seems that Chris's father makes some effort to understand his son, but is struggling with it under the weight of the rest of his life. He never sees clearly the damage that he's caused his son from his addiction and would rather want it to stay hidden. Not until the end of our adventures when we wake up Charles do we learn how he really feels about Chris. No matter which way the conversation goes after the neighbor checks up on all the noise of Charles's drunken yelling and stumbling coming from our house, we're finally hit with the perspective truth that has been held back from the player. How Chris views the world and the extent that he believes he understands his father's perspective come crashing down. A realization that his father blames him for the death of his wife. Whether he's telling the whole truth or not, it seems clear that he believes some fault lies on Chris for their situation. To Chris in that moment it makes sense. All of the abuse, drinking, lying, ignoring comes to fruition. As he's storming out of the house with his father yelling after him, the full effect of his mother's death comes into view. It's impacted the family forever and for the worst. The way people deal with loss can tell more about their character than the words they say. In this case, it was the alcoholism that was the second weight on a struggling family that pushed a relationship to the limit. The player experiences a journey of discovery, not of himself, but of his father and the struggles that shaped him. Telling a story focused on a father is not new to games, but Captain Spirit tells its story around a core of loss and alcoholism that makes the story better for it, if not more tragic. The story is short and sweet, so to speak, and uses the strength of the developer to provide a deeper and more meaningful insight into alcoholism by using conflict, environment, and perspectives like they have in earlier games. I hope that other developers take note of the mature way that Don't Nod has treated the topic of alcoholism, and maybe a new wave of stories covering tough topics in gaming is just around the corner. Let me know down in the comments how you think alcohol is used in video games, whether it's good or bad, or if you have a good example that you want to share. For those new to my channel, I encourage you to check out some more of my videos, or at least the small beginnings video that I created as a trailer introduction to my channel. If you like the videos that are being made, I'd encourage you to support me through Patreon and get your name added to my early supporters list. I want to thank you for watching, and until next time, this is Devin J, and this is Pixel Report.